Hey everybody, welcome to the Sobriety Diaries. I'm your host, Nate Kelly, a recovering alcoholic, 7 years from my last drink, a recovery mentor, and podcast producer. I am so grateful to be bringing you these powerful stories of recovery told by you, those who live them. Please share this podcast with anyone who may need it today. And with that, let's open the diary on episode 98 of the Sobriety Diaries. Welcome back to the Sobriety Diaries. I am here with a new friend of mine, Ann Anderson, co-founder at Sunnyside, the #1 mindful drinking app, and a way to help you cut back without the pressure of quitting alcohol. Ann Anderson, welcome, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here. I'm glad it's Friday. These weeks, sort of working at Sunnyside are long and rewarding. So every time it's Friday, it's a nice.
I have a group of people that I text every Friday, TGIF, like, we made it, we're here, another one in the books. So I feel you on that.
Yeah.
Well, we had a chance to kind of get to know one another before I hit record, and I'm excited to hear about your personal journey and how it led to co-founding this company, this app that has helped so many, and hopefully we can inspire some listeners to explore the Sunnyside app. But I wanted to start first with the difference in mindful drinking and abstinence from alcohol or sobriety. And how do you convey that to Sunnyside customers or in your personal life? So what's the difference to you?
Yeah, I think we had this blog post called Mindful Drinking 101, where we sort of really dug deep and tried to define mindful drinking for ourselves as we went on this journey. And I really like the opening sentence that says mindful drinking is really about thinking while you're drinking and creating some new habits around how you fit alcohol into your life, if it's something that you're going to continue to keep as part of your lifestyle. Mindful, when people join Sunnyside, they join at various levels of alcohol consumption as a starting point. And this is something that we can actually look at based on the diagnostic information that people fill out. And people join Sunnyside on a very wide spectrum. There's some that come in above the CDC recommendation, CDC guidelines, some people that come in right around the middle, and some that come in way under. And what we find is that the common reasons for people wanting to reduce their drinking don't really change as that spectrum, as people go up and down that spectrum of how much they drink. So people are joining Sunnyside as a mindful drinking platform in order to build healthier habits around alcohol. And we make it very clear, we are not about, we never put pressure on people to quit drinking. We never shame or guilt people during the process if they slip up in terms of hitting their goals. And that's one of the things people really love about us and find sort of as a differentiated approach from maybe other things that they have tried. So mindful drinking is really, like, at the heart of it, for most people, it's about cutting back on their drinking and finding a new baseline. But to really dig into the definition, you can become a more mindful drinker even if you maintain the same level of drinking. And this would include things like learning how to pace differently, learning how to rotate every drink with water, learning how to appreciate non-alcoholic beverages, and like filling your refrigerator with non-alcoholic alternatives.
There are so many alternatives.
There's so many right
now. Even mocktails
or
the new waters, like, there are so many options.
Yeah. I love doing that myself, and it's a fun sort of discovery process over time. So, And then I would also say it's really important to note that we did a survey recently, and about 15, I just want to get the right number here, about 12% said that they do plan to stop drinking in the future. So mindful drinking for many is also the start of a longer term alcohol journey that may involve sobriety in the future. And so mindful drinking is it's a moderation based approach to sort of like regaining control over alcohol and then possibly quitting. But for most people that join Sunnyside, it isn't about quitting, and it's about kind of reestablishing where it fits as a priority in your life and deciding if it's still something that you do want to keep in your life. Um, so that's the I could keep talking about that for a while. I
Yeah.
could also tell you what it means to me.
Yeah, I would love to hear what it means to you and how it sort of reiterate one of the things that you said that I love is that there's this focus on reestablishing that baseline and more of
Yeah.
a positive reinforcement approach to it rather than this guilt and shame focus, which talking
Yeah.
to hundreds, probably thousands of alcoholics and those in recovery is one of the things or one of the problems that people have with a 12-step program is that there is this shame and guilt and sort of rehashing the past approach
Yeah.
to sobriety. So, an amazing alternative, a completely different approach, and it could lead to abstaining from alcohol or you know, a life of recovery. But there's not that pressure from day one, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. We get, I think it's worth recognizing that we do get a lot of people in who comment on our like our Facebook ads who are in recovery, whose reaction to us promoting a moderation-based approach to alcohol is basically like, this doesn't work. You know, this can't work, it will never work. You know, it's proven that it won't work.
Yeah.
And I don't I need so my own father went to AA and he had a high degree of success with that. And when I first told him that I was going to create a company focused on alcohol moderation, he said the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I believe that for some people that is the truth. But what we're really focusing on, and I think it's important to note, is we Sunnyside is categorically not designed for people with addiction or alcohol use disorder. Um, so modern science does show that a combination of things like CBT, in-person therapy, medication, and mindfulness can be successful in helping people reduce their alcohol consumption. And for a lot of members, when they start tracking their drinks, they start actually understanding their triggers for drinking. And understanding their triggers for drinking is almost the start of doing their own therapy. And then as they're digging into the reasons for drinking, they start to stop drinking because of those triggers. And if we can just help people cut back on their drinking by 30% on average, which is what our members see, we feel like we're helping people reestablish those healthy habits. So it creates a bit of a conversation, a healthy
Sure.
dialogue, and one that gets pretty heated sometimes. But I just
That's
want
okay
listeners
too.
to
Yeah.
know it is okay. And I
Yeah.
think our ultimate vision here is to like change the conversation around alcohol health. If somebody feels like they want to cut back on drinking these days, there aren't a lot of options that people generally know about. The way that I describe this to people is if I was walking down the street and asked almost anyone, like, what would you do if you wanted to cut back on drinking? They'd probably say, well, first of all, I wouldn't because I don't want to go to AA and I don't want to
Right.
call myself an alcoholic, but I guess I'd go to AA. So
Right.
we want to change the game around alcohol health and make it, we think of it kind of like what Calm did for mental health,
Mm.
normalize it, bring it into sort of an app, and with at a very low cost to help people sort of regain control and build new habits and like generally change the dialogue around alcohol health.
That's great. Yeah. And I think no matter what side of the argument you're on, it's undeniable the benefits, health wise, mental health wise, undeniable the benefits that come about because of decreasing or being mindful about your drinking. So I think I say in every episode, all of
Yeah,
our journeys or paths are different, but no matter how we start them or how we get there, you will start to see the benefits if you
yeah,
reduce the quantity of alcohol, and then how you take that or run with that motivation is your own journey. So I think sparking that conversation and providing an outlet or providing that sort of on the go app version to spark the conversation is beautiful.
yeah. I love that.
So we mentioned your dad. I say
Mhm.
a lot that it's a family disease, and I'm sure that other instances or circumstances in your life led you to sort of explore this as a passion or profession. And you mentioned your own journey with mindful drinking. So let's kind of touch on that and talk about how all of that transitioned into founding Mindful Drinking or Sunnyside.
Totally. I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that I'm building a mindful drinking service to help people cut back, and my family was so impacted by alcohol in such a bad way. It feels unreal at times in a very positive way. Like
Right.
this is
Like we
probably
get to do this. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's totally right.
Yeah.
Um, so my story with my family's relationship to alcohol, I think, starts with my parents. Shortly after I was born, I had a twin brother. I have a twin brother, which was honestly, as you hear more about this story, was probably one of the reasons that we kind of survived through the traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
Um, but shortly after I was born, a couple years after, my mom and dad both took to drinking alcohol in a very downward spiral kind of way, and they did it each on their own in sort of their own private world. They were never really doing it together. So I don't really know much about their relationship at that time, but it feels like alcohol drove a wedge between them, and then they drank separately. So my dad was a evening drinker, got up to 12 beers a night, the way that he puts it, and then got to the point where, drinking and driving was normalized, leaving the house in the evening was normalized, and even got into some really bad cyclical habits because he worked in construction where during the day they would do uppers, and then during the evening
Ooh.
the downer would be alcohol.
Yeah.
It was a fast cycle for him. Happened over just 5 or 6 years. And I just talked to him the other day. He told me he has never had a drink in a bar. He's never drank with friends. So it was a very
Wow.
it was a very private thing for him.
That adds a whole nother
Um,
layer of this secretive
it,
life and this
yeah,
internal. Yeah.
that blew my mind. I never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, at the same time, my mom was starting to drink, and she was like would literally lock herself in her room and drink. Um, she had a very, very fast downward spiral. And so the long and short of it is that my dad moved out so my dad found sobriety because he saw the family going spiraling downwards through AA, and he went straight to AA meetings and went cold turkey. So he found the support that he needed. So in that respect, I have a great love and admiration for AA and the support that it gave him. And
Sure.
then he moved out because he needed to get out of the house. So my brother and I were left with my mom, and she just got worse and worse, and she could barely support the family. And there's um, very traumatic experiences that I remember. My memory's not very good at that time, but the critical memories are of my mom passed out or stumbling or falling, and my brother and I having to run to the fire station next door. Like, thank God there was a
Wow.
fire station next door, and
Yeah.
just thinking about it, like it became a habit. We would run over there when we woke up and she was passed out. My dad took us out of that living situation, moved us away, and we started to see her only every couple of months. And then eventually we hadn't seen her for 2 years. During that period, she struggled with schizophrenia, as far as we were told. She eventually moved in with somebody else that could provide alcohol for her, who was much older, and
Mm.
apparently she married. And that man basically helped her drink herself to death. And I saw her once over the course of 2 years. And then when I was 11, we got the call that she passed away due to liver failure in a hospital. And we had seen her a week before in the hospital, but at that age, I didn't really even know what was going on. And it was scary. It was sad seeing her laying
Yeah.
on the bed. She was small. She wasn't herself. Um,
Yeah. I hear that
but
liver and kidney failure or disease just ravages the body.
she wasn't even conscious the
Yeah.
last time we saw her. Yeah, she didn't even look like herself. And I barely remember that, but it was one of those memories that I do remember.
Yeah. Of course.
um, and at that time that was happening, my dad had turned his life around. He was providing an incredible world for us to grow up in as kids. And he's been sober 30 years now. Um,
Amazing.
it for me really represents sort of the two ends of recovery. One that I don't know if my mom ever had it in her to seek out help. I think she had a very troubled childhood and had inner demons and things like that. But my dad was able to do what he needed to and step into a role of responsibility, which is I definitely commend him for. Um, so
So was it
I can
just
pause.
the two of you boys?
There was an older half brother and half sister.
Okay.
they had moved out for the most part and lived with their dad at that time.
Gotcha.
Um, so yeah, it's blurry. The memories are blurry, but yeah, it was mostly just us. Like at one point, just us living in the house with our mom, which at this point, at this time feels pretty scary
Right.
to even
Yeah.
think about. So I've heard a lot of people say that. Oh, I should mention, both my grandparents on both sides were alcoholics. My dad's dad basically drank himself to death. My dad's mom, we think, fell while drunk and
Mm.
hurt herself. And on my mom's side, my mom's mom basically did the same thing that she did. She separated from the family and drank herself to death. I hope these aren't too deep of topics. Like this is
No, this
literally
is,
just my
you know, it highlights that generational and that
oh,
cyclical family disease of addiction. I think it portrays it perfectly.
I've heard from a lot of folks that have had family histories that the way they kind of describe it like this. For me, my relationship with alcohol has been confusing because it was always this really scary thing. And I had my first drink when I was a senior in high school, which feels late compared to a lot of other people
Yeah,
I've talked.
that was my next question, sort of how you took that experience as an adolescent. And for me, you know, a freshman, sophomore year, I was like counting down the days until I could find someone to buy me booze. So it sounds like maybe at least delayed it a couple years.
Yeah, I was a pretty quiet, kind of studious high schooler. And
Yeah,
my twin brother and I think they created this little capsule. We were like competitive and we kind of had each other. And
yeah.
yeah, we just kind of stayed away from substances and trouble as high schoolers. In college, I started testing out drinking, and that's when I was introduced to binge drinking, which is very, very common on college campuses. And when I started drinking, I never even really thought of it as, I think I then very quickly separated it from my family history
Mm.
and just assumed I would never have any issues with alcohol. In 2018, I realized I was going out with my coworkers like 2 or 3 times a week, getting drinks, and it just became so habitual. I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I'm 30 pounds heavier than I want to be. I don't look like I want to look. I got recorded for like a podcast or something, and I wrote like a video, and I saw the video and I was like, you guys can't use this footage. So it just
Yeah,
I think I was having too much fun and being irresponsible. So I took 3 months off of drinking and just like it's really the way that my brain works. Like that's how I did it, and I reestablished my habits around health and wellness. And I then a couple of years later, I my co-founder brought the idea of Sunnyside to me totally randomly. He didn't know my family history at all. And
that's
Nick
how it
Allen,
happens.
it was crazy.
Yeah,
Nick Allen, my co-founder, has two parents and recovering parents as well. So we really clicked on our stories and also sort of our backgrounds and our work and decided that there was nothing that focused on alcohol moderation or habit tracking in the way that we wanted to see. What we saw in the market, even the ones that were more that said they weren't really sobriety focused, were really sobriety trackers at the end of the day and sort of streak seeking. You know, 1 dry day, 2 dry day, 3 dry day. Okay, now reset.
yeah.
And we didn't want that to be the feeling. Um, my co-founder Nick built the product for himself and his wife when they were on vacation and wanted to try, you know, as like habit people themselves, wanted to
Yes.
say, well, let's track our drinks, and couldn't find any apps that solve that purpose. So
It makes so much sense. We look at alcohol or drinking as a habit and it turns into this habitual behavior. How much sense does it make that now we can track that habit or turn it into a habit that we are reducing the quantity and sort of focusing on the flip side of it?
I think 100%.
Yeah.
I was when Nick approached me with the idea in 2020, I was like, I've been tracking my drinks in a spreadsheet for a couple of years, yeah,
Right.
along with like a couple other habits because I like to correlate them.
Yeah.
So, tracking is when people first join Sunnyside, we tell them like, look, don't stress too much about where you're gonna go. Just track your drinks for 2 weeks. Do us that favor, and it's profound for people.
So
Um,
is that the initial sort of when you download the app and set up your profile? Is that sort of the baseline that you establish is 2 weeks of tracking?
We actually ask you specifically what your average drinks are Monday through Sunday, and that establishes the initial baseline because we need to get some reading on where your starting point is.
Right.
And then we supplement that with the first 2 weeks of tracking. And then every week going forward, we're basically building averages and trying to pull you down from that average. So even if you come in a little hot, or you tell a little bit of a white lie and you come in a
Yeah.
little low, eventually, as long as you're tracking accurately, the system normalizes and finds you. We understand your baseline, and then what we're effectively trying to do over time is pull you down to the CDC guidelines. But that should never stress anybody out.
Yeah.
What we're really trying to do is help people find their own personal healthier relationship with alcohol. Um, but there's actually science behind tracking. So it creates a conscious interference, I think is the proper word. And it's a pretty simple concept. It pausing to actually track in the moment causes your brain to sort of double check with you and make sure that that's something that you actually want to be doing. And then once we get beyond tracking, we start planning on every Sunday. And planning is sort of this concept of pre-commitment. And it's been scientifically shown that if you pre-commit to something, you'll be much more likely to hit those goals. So rather basic concepts, but put into the idea of alcohol habit formation can be pretty powerful.
Probably important to stress, not this isn't, your doctor asking you how many drinks you have in a week and you just pull some number out of the air.
Yeah,
Important to take a long hard look in the mirror, be honest with
yeah,
yourself, be honest on the app. To your point, there are scientific and statistical reasons for the tracking.
yeah,
So I think committing to that honesty is probably important before you decide to jump into the Sunnyside journey.
yeah, absolutely. Very well put. And it's worth stressing. Um, it's anonymous and private.
Right.
And important these days, the data is never shared with advertisers or third parties. We keep it in house and it's only used. The only time somebody can look at your data is if you're interacting with one of our human coaches, which makes sense because we
Yeah.
need our human coaches to understand where you are. But even then, we communicate with you over text message. That's it. It never feels like you have to go talk to a doctor.
Yeah.
The text message and motivation is one of the things that really sets us apart too. And I think people really come to appreciate when they're, let's say, at a dinner party and they're trying to have a dry day, but they feel a little bit of desire to drink, they can text their coach and get a response right away.
That's amazing. I love that. What are the costs involved? Are there different price points, different packages? What should people expect when they
It's a good
head
question.
over to their app store?
Well, for starters, everyone gets a free 15-day trial, so everyone should try it out if they're tempted or this sounds right. And we're very lenient with our refunds. It's something that is important to Nick and I. We want to build a company that people feel comfortable asking for what they need. And if we're not working, then we give the money back. I will say very few people ask for that,
Sure.
but just know that there's a safety net there. So the annual price is $99 a year. That comes out to $850 a month. We super encourage people to commit to that because, again, sort of like the pre-commitment, our data
Yeah.
shows that you're more likely to cut back if you commit to that year. I know it's a $99 cost up front, but when you break it down to $850 a month, we
So
like to,
reasonable.
it's extremely reasonable
Yeah.
for the impact that you're having on your life.
Right.
Most people save $50 or more a month when they join Sunnyside. So the cost shouldn't really be a big concern if you are committed.
Yeah.
Um, and we do have monthly and quarterly plans. They're a little harder to find because we do like to try to encourage people to get to annual. But if anybody listening needs a monthly and quarterly, email our support team and we'll take care of you. It's that simple.
Nice.
So yeah, and it starts with an upfront diagnostic so we can gather some information and then 2 weeks free. And in those 2 weeks, we really try to get you into the habit of tracking. Very simple. It
Yeah.
takes seconds or minutes a day. There are some services that ask you to commit 15 minutes through exercises a day. And we do have ways we can get you there. But for the most part, I'd say 80% of our users are finding success through the basics of tracking and planning and coaching and community as well.
Yes. And I will link everything in today's show notes. I will remind listeners about the quarterly plans as well. And what were some of the benefits or outcomes that you were surprised by personally when you started focusing on mindful drinking and tracking your habits?
Me, yeah.
Yeah,
Great question. I felt and looked better.
yeah,
And I think a lot of people, looking better is one of the things that I think is a personal feeling. And we don't talk about it a lot, but like, I think I knew that I wasn't looking like I wanted to. And my confidence increased. And I
yes,
think it builds this little virtuous loop within me where I want to look better, therefore I don't want to drink as much, therefore I want to work out in the morning, therefore I'll look better. And I think some people might call it habit stacking, but like those little reward loops are what really keep me focused these days. I'm at the point now where if I don't get a short workout in the morning, I don't quite feel like myself. And these days, I try not to drink even one drink during the week. I just don't like the way it makes me feel the next morning. I don't like the fact that it throws me off my little habit loop too.
right.
Um, so if I am going to drink, I'll do it on a Friday or Saturday with some friends or something. I also have a Whoop, which is a fitness and like biometric tracker, and it will very quickly teach you how much a single one or two drinks impacts your sleep. And now, as I'm getting older, I'm chasing like high quality sleep over everything else. I think like at the end of the day, I think I'm chasing high quality sleep because I realize how much that impacts me.
Ian Anderson, co-founder of Sunnyside, the #1 mindful drinking app. And parting words on mindful drinking or moderation for perhaps listeners who may be really struggling right now.
Yeah. My parting words are that if you're thinking about reducing your alcohol consumption, which you probably are, because in several surveys, almost half of US adults who drink say they want to cut back, but they don't. If you are thinking that you want to, and it's feeling like perhaps a sobriety service or a support group is too heavy-handed for you right now, we do obviously fully support those. Then try your hand at mindful drinking. And maybe don't even think of it as mindful drinking, but try your hand at tracking your drinks, understanding your triggers, talking to coaches over text message and getting support from a community. I also, another really simple way to start, which doesn't even involve the Sunnyside product, is a Facebook group that we created called the Mindful Drinkers.
Hmm.
And it's just taken off. You don't have to use Sunnyside. We created as part of like a test, and we now have 40,000 people, and it's bigger than
Wow.
any moderation based group that we've been able to find. It's growing fast, and it's a private group, so you do have to apply. The conversations in there are so inspirational, and we stress that it's not a group where we want people to sort of preach sobriety. It's a group where we want people to talk about their struggles and successes with moderation. And you'll see people telling stories about going 2 days alcohol free. So that's a great place to start. A lot of people jump into that community and just feel a big sense of relief, like, okay, I'm not alone. That I'm just like everybody else that wants to moderate. You should check it out.
For sure. I
It's a
just,
really
I'm on it now. I will link
yeah,
that in today's show notes too. That's a
yeah,
great
cool.
resource.
Yeah, and like I said, that's totally free. So that's a good place for people to start.
Yes. And again, just to reiterate, I'm so honored and grateful that we get to do this and we get to be involved in helping people be better versions of themselves. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for letting me help to bring this resource to my listeners. Ian Anderson, thanks for your time today, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to get to meet you and be able to get a chance to talk to your listeners. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for listening today, friend. Hopefully you heard something that resonates with you. And if we help just one person, our job is done. Make sure you check today's show notes for all the information discussed in today's episode and how to connect with our guests. Until next Wednesday, try your best not to drink and be good to yourself. Bye, everyone.